Welcome to the reButts, where everyday opinions are rebutted, and you, the listener, decide the winner.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Christian Thomas Linzer.
I'm Craig Kirchgessner.
And we're back for episode number 2 of The reButts. So last week, or I guess should I say the last episode, we had the topic of tennis coat. I went with Djokovic, Craig went with old Fed, and the comments, people spoke. I believe that I had 2 votes for Djokovic. I mean, it wasn't like they were my friends or anything. And one vote for Federer. Yeah. And we had a thesis written about our
podcast.
Did.
He broke us down pretty good.
And I was genuinely impressed. So if you're listening to that, probably aren't, or if you're listening to this, should I say, thanks. And
yeah, we love the commentary. Always clap back. We'll clap back at you. It's fun.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this, honestly. So, but on today's podcast, we're going to get into what exactly we're doing, Craig?
We're going to do the top offenses that either A, will produce on the real football field, or B, produce for your fantasy leagues.
So kind of teams, or I guess teams that feature players that you want to invest fantasy stock into. What breaks down top offenses in the NFL, Craig?
I think the 3 main categories that we're going to use, I think obviously you want your teams to put up massive points. If you look at the Final 4 of last year, you had Kansas City, the Rams, New Orleans, and New England, each of which put up the 4 highest totals in points per game.
Yeah, and if you look at those averages, the Rams, the Saints, and the Chiefs all averaged above 30 points. The only 3 teams to do that. And then you see at least a 3-point cutoff between those 3 and the Pats. So, that's a quality stat to keep in mind. And it's just kind of, I think 2 of those 4 teams in particular have just raw offensive firepower between like a gunslinger quarterback and Mahomes and Breeze, and then some top-tier receivers, and then some complimentary backs that can definitely get the job done on the ground.
Yeah, I think the second stat we're going to look at, mostly for fantasy, because I don't think that it equates to victories in the real NFL, is yards. Mm-hmm. Just straight-up yards. People like T.Y. Hilton aren't exactly touchdown makers, but whenever he gets luck throwing on the ball, his yards per game make him fantasy relevant.
Exactly, and that's kind of where, if you look at a lot of fantasy gurus' big boards, they've got Deshaun Watson at number 2. And I'm a Packers fan. You'll hear about that later on. I wouldn't necessarily want Deshaun Watson leading my offense every drive, but he does have that offensive capability with his legs. Last year, he led the NFL in yards per attempt with, I believe, 6.1 or something above 6 yards. Or 5.9, one of those 2.
Yeah, it was high.
Yeah, definitely. But he gets it done. He gets the points. So don't you have him?
I have one more. We have one more that we're going to use. The metric that we're going to use is points per drive. This is important in a couple of different ways. One, if you care about real football, then this is important because you want your team to be the most efficient possible.
Right.
But B, if you're only thinking about football from a fantasy perspective, well, some games, time of possession's not going to favor your team, so you're going to need your team to make the most of every single possession. So points per possession, in my opinion, is the 3rd major category to a great offense.
And do you have the last year's points per possession?
Yeah, last year, Kansas City, the Gunslingers, they put up over 3.2 a possession. Same with New Orleans. And then the Rams were just under with 2.8. Well, 2.79, if you will.
Yeah.
So those were the top 3. And then, as you'll hear, we have some other picks in there that we think are going to slide into the top 5 this year.
They may not be up in last year's stats, but things have changed with some teams. And as you may have guessed already, those 3 teams are going to be featured in our breakdown here.
Hard not to.
And so speaking of this breakdown, we're going to give you 6 teams that we think do have the most successful or most productive offenses in the game from an actual football standpoint as well as a fantasy standpoint.
And how we're going to determine a winner, obviously you guys get to decide if one of us made better points than the other. Maybe you just throw out one of my teams. Might be the Rams, which I'm going to start with here in a second. But if you think that you agree with one of our teams is going to finish on top, let us know. But at the end of the season, Christian and I are going to add up our major 3 categories, break them down. First place gets 6 points. Last place gets 1. And then we'll tally up to see who actually came out on top. And, it's going to be fun to keep track of this all season. So, with no further ado, I'm going to start with my number 3 offense this year, who I think is going to finish 3rd overall, and that is the LA Rams.
Oh, yeah.
Runner-up, I think they're going to have a chip on their shoulder going into the season. Sean McVay, young.
Great coach.
Coach of the year. Youngest coach to have a plethora of different titles. I mean, he's youngest coach of the year, youngest Super Bowl coach. He is an offensive guru. I think that that coaching staff they have is pretty good. According to one of Bleacher Report's article, they have the 2nd highest rated coaching staff, which if I was picking an offense, I would want a good coaching staff, especially a young offensive mind like
Matt LaFleur?
No, not your boy.
I mean, last year, look at the offseason, everyone wanted one of McVay's boys. Like, those a few knew Sean McVay. If you had lunch with him once, you were going to get a head coaching job offered to you.
We should have had lunch with him.
Sean,
Sean, if you're listening, we'll do lunch. We'll even pay, maybe.
Yeah, I'll tag you in this. I'll tag you in this on Twitter. Hopefully, you get to this point of the video.
So obviously, looking at it, there's a couple things that might worry you about having the Rams as a top offense again. That being, Sean McVay got slightly exposed in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no doubt.
That was a defensive masterpiece by Bill Belichick. So maybe teams have had the entire offseason to look at that, study, figure out a way to stop them.
He shouldn't have even been there in the first place. But hey, that's
hey, come on now, no more suing for the New
Orleans.
Orleans.
the Rams here.
Secondly, I do think there has to be concern over our boy Todd Gurley.
Yeah,
I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I'm all about him. I think that even if he's 75% of what he was, he's still fantastic. But he does worry me a little bit. I mean, he sat out the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It can't be that good if he sat out the Super Bowl. So that does worry me. I mean, they did spend, they traded up actually to get Darrell Henderson in the 3rd round, giving up 2 later picks. I don't know if those are that valuable, but they spin up, or they traded up to get Darrell Henderson out of Memphis. We'll see if he's going to play a role. Last year, a lot of the times, though, they would have such a big lead that Todd Gurley would still be in there chunking up some yards.
Just get like garbage time, basically.
Yeah, I think this year they're going to get that lead with Todd Gurley, rest him. Hopefully he can make it all season long. If he does that from a fantasy perspective, I mean, I don't know how you don't take him top 5 pick. He's scary, but his upside's insane.
He also just got a cat yesterday. He's apparently a cat guy.
I saw that. That was weird.
Not a fan.
I didn't love
Enough with the Ram slam. My bad. All right.
Yeah, you're just a hater right now. I do think another addition to make this offense great is Cooper Kupp.
Oh, yeah. They really missed him last year. He played 5 games. He got injured in Week 5 against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, he was tearing it up before that.
Leading up to that game, the game before, 9 catches, 162 yards, 2 TDs. And then the game before that, 4 catches, 71 yards, and 1 touchdown.
I mean, you take that off the field in any scenario, that's a big loss. The thing about them, though, they didn't feel that loss because they still had Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
That's how deep this offense, especially at wide receiver, is. And people can hate on Jared Goff being a system quarterback. If your system is Sean McVay, as of this point, we say, sign me up to be a system quarterback. Is Tom Brady a system quarterback? If Bill Belichick's the system and he's the quarterback, it made him the GOAT. So if Jared Goff can show us that he can continue with what he's done the last 2 years, his rookie year was a struggle, but his last 2 years have been wonderful. If he can do that, I don't know how this team doesn't finish in the top 3.
And if he doesn't, they have the boat as a backup. Blake Bortles, my man, balding at the age of 27, something like that. Hopefully he gets some time this year. That'd be a great thing if they run it up on some teams and the boat comes in and sails his way into victory. You have anything else to say about those Rams?
I think they kind of speak for themselves. They're one of those teams that their numbers from last year, They didn't lose too much. They get some pieces back healthy. Obviously, like I mentioned, the Todd Gurley scares me, but that's just a team that has enough weapons to keep them in my top 3.
And that defense is raw. They just got Clay Matthews. Holy crap. So, I'm going to take over here for a few minutes. I'm going to talk about none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, as you know, a lot of things went down with the Steelers last year between drama and players not playing, and I guess it was just not a good time if you're a Steelers fan. They don't necessarily quite have the raw offensive firepower that we see with some of these other teams that we're going to mention going forward. But I'm going to go out on a limb with this one, honestly. They're my number 3, so I thought, why not? Roethlisberger's a massive liability. You know, he's huge in terms of interceptions. I think last year the Steelers had the 6th highest points per game, so he's clearly getting things done, and the offense was clearly getting things done. But they were also 6th from last in turnovers per drive. So, yes, they have a decent offense, but also they're fantasy-wise, I would not draft him. That's all I'm going to say. And I have zero confidence in either of the Steelers' backup quarterbacks. So we'll see. He's getting kind of old, but he does have a quality offensive line with 2 Pro Bowlers from last year coming in. And I know they just got rid of their offensive line coach, but the assistant under him for about the past 5 years is going to step in as the head offensive line coach. So I don't think much is going to change with that front.
I think one of the major factors that makes Ben successful is, A, he's a veteran, but also he's so efficient in the red zone. Last year, they actually led the league with 73.47% in red zone touchdown efficiency.
Yeah, I mean they score when they're down there. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean that's number 1 in the league, and I think a large part to that. Obviously, they lost Antonio Brown, which that hurts, but I think that's more of a Big Ben factor rather than a star wide receiver.
Yeah, that is true. But they do have Juju Smith-Schuster, who is emerging as one of the top wide receivers in the league, no doubt. And they also, of course, they lost AB, Mr. Frostbite, but they also picked up Dante Moncrief, who, he's underproduced, I'm not even going to lie, but if you look at his years past, he was like a first-round pick back in 2014. He was with the Colts for his first 2 years. I think he missed 11 games with injury. Then he went to Jacksonville, where I know he's the boat, but he didn't have a quarterback who could get him the ball. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Moncrief can emerge, or if he does emerge in the system, which clearly favors the passing game. James Conner, there's a big question mark. He's the true number 1 now. And yes, they've got a massive offensive line, but if he can step up to the task and I know he did a great job filling in for Le'Veon last year, but we'll see if he can do it again this year. That's kind of the big question, is if he can repeat what they did last year. And they weren't the most successful team on the ground, but still efficiently enough to be considered decent. And I think one of the big things I kind of hinted at early in the Steelers discussion is they cut down a lot of the locker room drama. I mean, you saw everything that went down there at the end with Le'Veon, of course, and offensive linemen going at him, and just I felt like it was silent in the locker room after every game. But they cut down on that drama by offloading some of those players, of course. And so I think a potentially happier team is going to be a more successful program. But, yeah,
I think Mike Tomlin has a lot off his plate. I mean, he is definitely what they call a player's coach, but I don't know if that is what he wanted when he didn't sign up for drama being a player's coach. So.
Exactly. There's kind of a fine line between being a player's coach and a reality TV series.
Yeah, and I think getting rid of Bell, even though that's my Michigan State boy,
Go Green.
and AB, I think they'll be all right. A lot of people are talking about Vance McDonald this year.
Yeah, I think he's like number 5. ESPN's ranked him number 5 or 6, maybe even 7th.
Yeah, he could have a great season. I wouldn't be shocked that there's a lot of targets to go around.
Yeah.
So from a fantasy perspective, I wish I had Juju on my team right now. Or my teams, got plenty of them. But I wish I had a little more Juju stock. But no, I think he is. They're gonna have a good season. Top 3, I don't know. That's where we're going to find out. Is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Ooh, that's exciting. As you guys know, I like to take the easy way out by taking Fed and taking the Rams. Well, this one's even easier. I'm going with Patrick Mahomes.
Kermit the Frog.
And the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, you look at their points per drive. Like I said, it was the best at 3.25. Their points per game, they led the way. They also led the league in yards per drive. Yeah. All right, I understand they had a loss. They lost someone. His name was Kareem Hunt.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm not too worried about it, though. I'm not confident. I'm not buying a bunch of stocks of Damian Williams, but I will buy the stocks of an Andy Reid-led offense because his running backs succeed in fantasy. They succeed in real life. I do think this team is set for greatness again. I didn't put them at number one because I have my true number one in my head that I'll get to in a second. But I don't know how they could finish outside of the top three if Patrick Mahomes stays healthy. Travis Kelce, best in the game. Tyreek Hill, I mean, the cheetah,
he's
the
explosive.
speed demon. He had the most explosive plays last year by anyone. If you could pair these two up, you get a little Patty, a little
He really
Hill combo.
He really beat up those defenses, dude.
All he does is run straight. Actually, he does a little everything, but he's wonderful. There's actually not a whole lot to say. They didn't have a whole lot. Their offensive line got a little better. They picked up a few guys like Mitch Morse, and then Eric Fisher was good. One problem with this team is their defense is atrocious.
Yeah,
and it got even worse in my opinion with losing some edge rushers. But in fantasy and in real life offense, I don't know if that kills you because that just means your offense gets the ball back more and more.
And I do think they kind of answered the age-old question in terms of this modern day of football and this kind of meta of football, of the question of good offense versus good defense. You know, they could not get stops on defense, but they would simply outscore the opposing teams and just had a raw offense with a gunslinger for a quarterback and just some quality pieces around him that made it work. So
yeah, I mean, I think if someone were to tell me that they don't think that the Chiefs can at least be top five, which I know Christian knows that they will be,
I do,
but he just didn't want them in his top three.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the hardest take there is. So if someone in the comment section wants to explain to me how the Chiefs don't finish top five in those three things,
come at
let
me,
us
bro.
know. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to take away my second pick. We're going with none other than the Green Bay Packers. I am a Packer backer. That won't be a surprise to you as we go along on this journey of podcasting and uploading. But I'm very, very excited about what could potentially happen with this team this year. Particularly, I mean, actually on both sides of the ball. Brian Gutekunst came in and did absolute bits. You know, he bolstered up the defense, drafted tons of players, and also actually went out in free agency, picking up key defensive pieces in the D-backs as well as on the line. So hopefully cut down on the time of possession. I think the Packers were in the second half in terms of TOP last year. And then they also paid and bolstered up the O-line. Second highest in salary in the entire NFL. So if we're paying them that much money, I really hope that they can protect none other than Aaron Rodgers. Speaking of, I do hope that he can be successful under the new head coach. I know it's a new coach and a new system is being brought in, but Aaron Rodgers has a brilliant football mind. And I think this is the change that we needed with some fresh young blood in the front office as well as on the field in terms of coaching staff. And Matt LaFleur, I am very high on what he can do for this team. If Rodgers can stay protected and healthy, then I think he can get the ball downfield to pretty much anybody, not to mention Devontae Adams, who is, in my opinion, a top 4 receiver in the league, both from a fantasy perspective as well as just pure football talent.
He didn't have as many absolute blow-up games last year, but he finished as a wide receiver 1 in every single week.
Yeah.
That consistency makes him exactly what I would want on my team. Yes, I like the high ceiling guys, but his floor being so low is just an absolute dream as a fantasy owner.
Definitely. And I'm just excited right now to be a Packers fan. I think, yes, of course we lost Randall Cobb. I love that guy, and I'm so glad that he was a part of the organization for all those years. But he was also getting kind of old. The Cowboys can have him. I don't really care.
Who do you think the number 2 is going to be this year?
That's what I'm getting to right now. We've been drafting in the past couple of years at least 2 receivers a draft, potentially, or may average out to about that. There's some young guns that are coming up. We've got Aquamius St. Brown. I probably butchered his name.
That's right. He's not listening. Don't
Marquez Valdez-Scantling is actually going to be. I'm pretty excited.
People
about
are high on that guy,
and as well as Geronimo Allison, my weed smoking, poor tweeting guy. Not a very good person, according to what he put out on Twitter earlier in his career. But you know what? I don't care. I don't judge. I actually like him a lot. I'm expecting one of these young receivers to step up and really play into the gap that has been created with the loss of Randall Cobb. Yes, we did sign my boy Jordy Nelson to a couple-day contract, so he could retire as a Packer. I was stoked about that. But I cannot forget about Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, of course. I do think he's going to take the lead in touches this past year. Mike McCarthy split touches with him and what's his face? William. Was it? I don't know. Can't think of it right now that I'm speaking into the microphone. But he split touches last year, and I thought all year that he was the top back and proved it time after time. Actually, last year, he led the league in yards per carry for running backs. Craig, we already mentioned this. Deshaun Watson was number 1 with quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Who's number 2 running back?
I know this one because we've done our research. Mm-hmm. My boy that I'm trying to get lots of stock in, Kerryon Johnson.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Oh, man, I would love to own him in some
fellow NFC North running back. I think, I'm pretty stoked about this year, and I expect big things from this offense. Between Rodgers, hopefully he can get back to his MVP numbers. Tay Adams hopefully has another standout year, and I expect big things. One of these young receivers to step up. Aaron Jones, of course, and that offensive line that I mentioned earlier. Last year, they were second in the league. I have it written down here. One sec. Just kidding, I do not. But, okay, here we go. They were 29th in sacks and 22nd in QB hits, but also averaged, I think, 2nd in yards per carry and some of the higher rushing stats. Do you have it written down there, Craig?
I don't see it.
Try the back of one of those pages. Poor radio. Yeah,
there it is.
2nd in yards per carry, 8th in yards for first contact, and 6th in negative runs. So the rushing game is there. We just need that explosive back end that can make things work. So that's all I got to say about those Green Bay Packers.
Oh, your Green Bay Packers. We'll see. I like them. I hope they have a good year.
Yeah.
Top 3. We'll see.
We'll see.
I like my chances right now. One more criteria that I have to have in my top offense is a top tier quarterback. Obviously, you have tiers when it comes to quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady's, Breeze, Russell Wilson, Luck. I think that's your tier 1. We already covered in mine was we already got Patrick Mahomes and not Drew Brees. Who's my other?
Jared Goff.
That's it. Jared Goff. Jared Goff falls into my tier 2. Another quarterback in tier 2 that I think is on an absolutely explosive team with an offensive coordinator back that I love is the Atlanta Falcons.
And Matty Ice, Dirt Cutter.
Matty Ice. I think he's getting his boy back, his offensive coordinator, Dirt Cutter back. They have updated their offensive line. They actually drafted 2 of them in the first round.
Jeez.
So that's going to help. They also get their all-pro running back, Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, drafted him first round last year. Big mistake. 2 games, 14 rushes, 68 yards.
Yeah, he crushed a lot of people. That's one of those players that I don't think people are going to forgive easily. So I think he'll probably fall a little later than he should.
He will.
I'm going to try to scoop him up.
Really?
Yeah, I got a couple third-round picks. Let's be honest. I'm going to scoop up a lot of people in there. I wouldn't mind spending a third on him. Anyway, I think Dirt Cutter, he had his ups and downs down there in Tampa. He's back. I think they're poised for great things. Another thing that I find to be very similar is back in 2012 and 2014 when he was there, that's when Julio entered the league and started balling. He got into the league in 2011, and he came in. He had 8 touchdowns, 54 receptions, 959 yards. Very similarly, he was the number 2 to Roddy White, as you guys remember, for about 4 years in there. Mm-hmm. very similarly, our boy Calvin Ridley
Calvin
comes into the game, 64 catches, 821 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Those are big numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are almost identical to Julio. Julio kept getting better as Roddy kept going slowly, because Roddy was great for a long time, kept going down slowly. I think when you have a dynamic duo of those two, throwing in Mohamed Sanu.
Oh, you cannot forget about Sanu.
And then a healthy Freeman, that's going to be tough. I mean, people still, for some reason, really like Austin Hooper. If you're one of those guys that just holds off on a tight end, sure. I'm not spending a high draft capital on him, but I do like him. But this team upgraded its offensive line. It gets their running back healthy. And if you look at all the stats from last year, their red zone efficiency, top 10. Their just total yards per drive, number 6. That was at 38. That's only 3 yards less than Kansas City at number 1. If you look at their total points per drive, they're still number 7, which is pretty good. I'm just saying they're not far off in any statistical category that we're really looking at, and I think they improved at every major position, coaching, young wide receiver going into year 2, upgrading the offensive line, getting the running back healthy. One more cool stat that I think is massively important, because when you're talking offense, you don't want to deal with rain, you don't want to deal with snow, you don't want to deal with the elements, and 13 dome games in the regular season is unheard of. I think their first 8 are in a dome.
That is out of 16 games?
Yeah, 13 out of 16. They're in a dome. I mean, that's when offenses perform their best. Matt Ryan's QBR is plus 15 in a dome.
That is a fact.
Let's see this offense get rolling this year with all those additions.
Speaking of dome play, Craig, great stuff there. My number 1 team, none other than the New Orleans Saints. Yes, they play better in domes, but guess what? They also play at home in a dome. Last year, they were the 3rd highest team in scoring per game, averaged 27.3 points a game, only behind Kansas City and the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, I know they lost Mark. Jeez. They lost Mark Ingram, and that, of course, hurts.
Yeah, but Latavius Murray,
he's going to be a good complementary back to Alvin Kamara, I think.
He might be better. He just might not have had the right system up in Minnesota.
It's the Vikings. Poof.
We'll see what he can do. I think he's going to be a bruiser.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's going to be fun to see what they can do together. A new pairing, but see if they can kind of recreate the success that Kamara and Ingram had last year and the year before. They still have none other than Drew Brees. Talk about a Big Ten success story, Craig. Man, the gunslinger out of Purdue. Who would have thought?
Boil her up.
He also, a little Texas boy. I think went to Southlake, one of those Austin high schools.
We've been there.
Yep. No, we definitely have. Unsuccessfully. And yeah, so we're gonna see what they can do. You know, of course, they had the Michael Thomas signing.
Yeah, that's a $100 millionaire right there.
Exactly. So I think he's got to step up. Of course, he's had great numbers throughout his first couple of years, and there's no doubt that he hasn't shied away from any competition yet. Up till this point, so I can't see him doing anything but going up in terms of his production and his passion for being on the field and with that program. Then, they got Ted Ginn Jr., who, yes, he's getting old, but yes, he's still going to be a consistent downfield threat. He's got blazing speed, folks, and Drew Brees is going to get it to him. Last but not least, they got the O-line. They have the best offensive line in the entire NFL, in my opinion. They best in QB hits, second in sacks allowed. So clearly they have something to do with Brees' longevity and consistent success. He's 40 now, isn't he? Or he's getting there.
Yeah, he's getting there.
Sure is near, if not already there. And honestly, if I had that offensive line blocking for me, I think I could get some fantasy points in the NFL. Clearly not a lot of pressure in the pocket. And with those receivers, Michael Thomas's catch radius is huge. I could just throw it somewhere and
his catch radius is huge. Guess what his catch percentage is?
Top in the NFL.
Number 1 in the NFL by 4 percentage points. He's 85.03. I was hating on my boy Austin Hooper. Hooper is actually number 5th in the NFL at 80.6. But I say, I'm not a Hooper guy.
Not a big hoop guy.
He's fine.
But anyways, so I do think that we're going to have a good program in the New Orleans Saints. No, I'm personally not a fan. I know we probably have some listeners that may be. Shout out Jack Mason if you're listening, and we'll have to get you on the pod sometime to talk Saints football. But I really think good things are going to come to that program, and we'll see what happens. So
that wraps up our top 3 apiece. Like we said, we'd love to hear what your comments are, who you think's going to end up being number 1. And we're gonna add these up at the end of the year to hash it out by the numbers. So it's not just gonna be my word against Christian's. We're actually gonna put some stats to the words.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's gonna be fun to track things throughout the year. I think we both got some good teams, no doubt. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
They don't.
We went out on a few limbs. Packers and Steelers. We'll see how that turns out. But guys, thanks for tuning in for episode number 2 of the reButts. And tune in next week for more quality conversation and debates on this channel. So see you guys then.
Peace.